John, you might have done this before. John and I have been on one of these calls. We talking about the impact of state and local aid before. So thank you for doing it again.
Thank you for having me.
How you doing, and what do you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, so I've been teaching at Croton now. This will be my 6th year at Croton Harmon High School. Before that, I taught in Arlington, and before that, I taught in the Bronx. So I still have friends and colleagues that work at those other districts, and it's 3 very different school districts that have a lot of the similar problems, dealing with health, safety, equity as the central focus, but also very unique ones. I can pretty much reiterate what everyone has already said. I would like to point out a few things, though, kind of big picture that's really important. First, districts in New York State have already experienced a cut. In this last year's state budget, we had to freeze foundation aid, which essentially was a cut as it didn't keep up with the cost of school expenses. And we've already had in school districts that rely on a lot of foundation aid, they've already had layoffs. So we built a plane in the sky last spring, as Daryl was talking to, you're in my classroom right now. But we're actually going back with less than we had then, right? Because we already experienced a cut. If we get this 20% cut on top of that, it is unimaginable how we could even begin to solve any sort of problems that arise from health, safety, social, emotional learning, and equity. Teachers are scared. We're scared for this fall. We all want to see our children. We want to be in our classrooms. We know that's the best place to be, but this is not normal times. And pretending it's normal or pretending like magic we will return back to normal, it's not only not helpful, it's destructive. And it makes our jobs incredibly more difficult. We're scared for our students. We're scared for their families, our families. We're scared for ourselves. I tried to get as many voices from my colleagues, knowing I was going to have this opportunity to speak with you today. And I actually sent out a little anonymous survey. And there was 2 main schools of thought amongst my colleagues. One, fearing they're not going to have a job in the fall. Or if you were lucky enough to know those cuts won't affect you, you were left just wondering if you were going to live through the school year. And that hit me when I was reading through those comments. Like, the lucky teachers this summer are the ones only worrying about their health and safety and not their jobs. Look, this pandemic's affected every part of society, right? It's not just teachers. But when we talk about the HEROES Act, it's not just us talking about state and local budgets. We're talking about saving lives. Even Betsy DeVos, in her pie-in-the-sky estimate for what the death rate could be this year for students, it's still equated to something like just under 15,000 students would die in her argument for why we should open without any aid to schools. There's no opening safely, right? It's just, how do we mitigate the risk? So for the HEROES Act to be passed, it's helping us maintain the resources we had last year, the staff levels we had last year, and it helps us mitigate those risks. So it's not just about saving budgets, it's about saving lives. Like, the HEROES Act will 100% save lives if it's passed. And if we don't pass the HEROES Act, more students, more teachers, more staff members, more families will die as a result of this legislation not passing. And like you said, Congressman, we need more than that at this point. Like, we need a national plan. As teachers, for it seems like the last 2 decades, we've been doing more with less, and we're used to kind of just putting our heads down and getting in the weeds and figuring out what every aspect of learning is going to look like. But we can't solve this problem in the walls of our classroom. Our districts are working tirelessly right now with community members, but they can't solve it on the grounds of our district or even the borders of our communities. We need a national plan. We need a national response. We need personal protective equipment. We need more testing with quicker turnaround times. We need the nationalization of industries to make sure that we have the supplies that we need when we do have spikes and waves. If we're not doing everything we can as a community and as a country to fight this pandemic, you're going to cost more lives when schools reopen. And I think that is this horrible kind of state of limbo that teachers are in this summer, where we figured out so much last year. We grew so much in remote learning from start to finish. And the fact that we're looking at this fall where we're already starting off with less than we had and now facing this 20% cut, which again, it's yes, our jobs, but it's also lives, because we need more staff, we need more resources. The less we have of those two things, the more people are going to die. That's also the simple math.
Yeah, John, that's really well said. It's really well said, and you know I really want to stress this for members of the press. You know, in May we proposed $90 billion and $1 trillion to state and local governments. That's what the Governors Association, bipartisan Governors Association, and the organizations of counties and mayors told us they were going to need over 2 years to fill the hole in their budgets in May. And I think a lot of people believe that, well, the pandemic would be over by now, the need would go away, and if they waited long enough, they could do less because they'd say, see, it's over. In fact, it's gotten worse. And I'll tell you one story. On a couple of days ago when the negotiations began, the White House Chief of Staff said, you know, we can probably match the money for K through 12 that's in the HEROES Act, and we'll do about $100 billion. And the speaker said, you know, it was $100 billion 2.5 months ago. And now that the pandemic is worse, and in more parts of the country, it may be 3 or 4 times that amount. So you guys are 2.5 months late to a conversation, and it's been getting worse. And now everybody doesn't know what the heck they're doing, and the need has only gotten greater. And that's just the K through 12 piece. If you don't do the state and local piece, and you and I have talked about this before, you're just going to create a hole somewhere else in a budget that's going to come back and hit the schools. I mean, it is not an opinion, it is math. And I think this is what I'm trying to tell these guys, is that we're in a war here. And unless we win this war, you know, all of these concerns aren't going to matter. We've got to put this virus to bed, and we've got to protect our people while we do it. And I hear you, man. And I just wish I had better news for you. I do think we're going to get something done in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I want to be clear. I think we will. I think these guys are going to kick and scream. I do think we are going to get something done. I don't know it'll be everything we want. Remember, we were going to do it over 2 years. If we can get money, though, immediately so that we support you in your reopening, then I think there's one less thing to worry about. I'm still worried, like you, about reopening, right? And the way you put it is very stark, but it's true. I mean, if we've got extra kids carrying the virus, going home, you know, giving it to medically vulnerable people, then we would, if we just did this right, people are going to lose their lives. It's that stark. And if the whole country looked like New York right now, we wouldn't be losing 1,000 lives a day nationally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is about human life. And it's bad enough that we're putting all of you on the front lines, along with our healthcare workers and essential workers and everybody else. We're putting the kids out there, and we all know that there's risk. But man, it's a big difference if we do this in a smart way, with a lot of resources thrown at it. You know, can I just say, in the Congress, right? I'm down here working. We're in Washington. That's fine. You know, we're like a classroom when you think about it. We put 400 people in one room. We all got a seat. And some of my colleagues are refusing to wear masks. One of them today, who has been thumping his chest about not wearing a mask, walking all over this place, talking to people without a mask, Louis Gohmert from Texas, just announced today that he's got COVID-19. This is breaking news today. And he went back and told his staff in person that he has COVID-19. I mean, what is wrong with you? And so that's what I'm dealing with down here. But I think that if you guys will have the thoughtfulness and the procedures in place, hopefully with these local plans, and that's what I want to ask you about, that, you know, because I can imagine, right, how Haldane, where my kids go, can do this. You know, like Andrea says, we're a pretty small school. We might have staggered shifts, or we might have some kids still doing it remotely. Maybe the kids who don't have access to technology, we should prioritize them for
Right.
in person, right? We could space it out. We could cancel sports. We could make people bring a lunch or get them lunch in a box, you know, so we avoid the gatherings. Like, I can start to see how this works and how it, you know, especially with, thank God, the very low levels of virus we have right now in the Hudson Valley. That starts to make sense to me. At least it's as safe as, you know, me going to work and others going to work out there. And I can feel good about my kids, you know, who desperately want to go back to school too, you know, being able to see their friends and learn the way they should. But we've got to support that system with a rational approach, evidence-based, well-resourced, and it's frustrating when even the members of Congress who need to do this are themselves setting such a bad example. So I want you to know I think despite all that, we're going to get something done. I can't tell you how much or how big, but I do think the facts on the ground are so bad in so many states now that we're going to have to do something. But Did anybody else want to get in here? And Aaron, do we have questions from the press that we're going to take? How are we going to do this?
Yeah, so we're going to bring all of the press live, and folks, make sure that you're unmuted yourself. But if anybody has a question, please either raise your hand or just shout it out. We haven't had anybody raise their hand yet. All right, we've got Doug. Go ahead, Doug Cunningham.
Doug Cunningham from the PCNR. On timing, we've got a lot of things going on right now that are kind of coming to a head. We also have that unemployment, the additional unemployment aid. A lot of those people are going to face serious issues at the end of this week. How long is it going to take to reach some resolution, and will we reach a resolution?
Well, I can't tell you the answer to that question, but I am absolutely committed to getting this done before real people get hurt. I don't want to sound partisan, but it is a fact that we put a plan on the table, a $3 trillion plan on May 15th. That is 10 weeks ago. And you don't like that plan? Fine. You want to do something else? Fine. Now, we still don't have a bill out of the Senate. And now we are up against these deadlines, like the extra $600 a week, which is a lifeline for people. And there are concerns about whether that discourages people from going back to work. Fine, put your plan on the table. Or let's see some evidence of that, which is lacking in this conversation, before we take that away from people. And by the way, some people are back to work. Some people have the opportunity to go back to work. When they're given their job back, Doug, remember, they are not eligible for unemployment insurance anymore. You can't just say no to your old job and keep collecting unemployment. That's something I find most people don't stop to realize. So once you get your job offered to you, if you refuse it, you're not eligible for the extra money. But even if it's a disincentive for people, the fact is that there are some industries, like think about people who work on Broadway. Think about people who are in hospitality. They're not going back to work anytime soon. When's the next time you're going to a movie or a Broadway show? So this economy right now is hurting some people even more than others, and that money is a lifeline for them. But look, we are open to some phasing down of that, or a good faith compromise that will get it done before people get hurt. One approach would be to renew the direct cash payments to families in exchange for a phase out of the pandemic unemployment assistance, the extra $600. All of us are open to a good faith compromise, but it should not have taken so long. And now families in New York are not going to get a check next week unless we get this done. So, but what I can tell you is some of us had a plan 2 months ago, and there's some people who still haven't come to the table with a good faith offer. And it drives me nuts because there are real families depending on us. And what I can tell you is I'm here for the duration. I'm going to stay here as long as it takes to get this done. And the sooner the better. But it is important that we get a real deal. So when you hear them saying, let's do it piecemeal, remember all these teachers need an answer on K through 12 aid too. And our state needs an answer on local aid to states and municipalities, counties and cities and towns, or the piecemeal part doesn't work. You've got to do it all. You know, we support Metro North. We'd give you back your state and local tax deductions, which would really be a shot in the arm to the folks I represent. And all of it is in one plan, written into law, been sitting out there for 2.5 months on Mitch McConnell's desk. So if they don't like it, I get it. No one's expecting them to just take our plan, but we still don't have one from them yet. Real people are about to get hurt, and it's very frustrating. But like I said, talks are ongoing. I'm here for the duration, and I will work with anybody to get this done. But we need what we need, and ultimately, you know, I can't come back to these teachers or the people I represent and say, you know, they put a gun to our head because the unemployment assistance was running out, and so I didn't address all these other needs that are equally urgent. I mean, school starts in a few weeks. Time's up.
Do you have any other questions from the press? Doug, it looks like you have another question.
I do, yes. Any comment, Congressman, on the report that President Trump believed the bounties on U.S. soldiers was fake news?
Well, that's what we call an off-topic question, but it's such an important subject. You know, as you know, I serve on the Intelligence Committee. I have access to the classified information, and I can't get into that. But what I can tell you is that I am as concerned about this as anything I have ever read in the press. And if the public reports are true, this warrants a very serious response from our government. The Russians need to know that they can't put a price on the heads of American service members and have it go unanswered. And we depend on the president to deliver that message in a crystal clear, no nonsense way. And to date, they have done nothing. I saw an interview this morning in which he said that he was not informed about it, never made it to his desk. Well, he sure knows about it now. And the question is what is he going to do about it? And we got a lot of people out there wearing our country's uniform in harm's way, and they deserve to know that the President of the United States has their back. So I'm very worried about that, and I'm deeply disturbed by the president's inaction on this. And I am doing everything I know how in out in the open and in a classified context to make sure the United States government protects the members of the U.S. military.
Okay, do we have any other questions for our teachers or the congressman about the HEROES Act? Local funding. Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you all taking a little time. I hope we have better news in a few weeks. I hope you won't have to wait more than a couple of weeks. Can I ask just one question before I let you go while I have you, which is these local plans. I didn't really give you a chance to talk about them. How do you feel like, let's set aside the money for a minute. You know, I know that's a big part of this, right? But let's say there are the resources for you guys to do whatever those school districts come up with in their individual plans. Do you feel like like I was saying in Haldane or around the Hudson Valley right now, if we give you the resources, is there a plan that the school districts are going to come up with that you're going to feel, you know, okay about, or is it worse than that?
I would say it depends on the district. It depends on the building. It depends on the grade level as well within that building. I think, though, that one of the big stumbling blocks, like let's just say all money aside with the plans, and you actually brought this up earlier in the conversation, Congressman, is the infrastructure piece, both technological, but also building space, the filters we need, the sizes we need. I mean, my school, part of the high school and the middle school were built during the Great Depression by the WPA. Like now is the time, right? Interest rates are very low, borrowing is very cheap. Now would be the time to make 21st century classrooms, public buildings, and that would go a long way, honestly, to being able to implement some of these plans. Because money aside, physical space and technological capabilities are I think the biggest stumbling blocks to be as safe as we can be.